Welcome back to Hoochos. Today on Hoochos, I'm going to show you how to grow these. These are deep water culture and Kratky hydroponic lettuce. Wow, look at those roots. This is fully mature lettuce, absolutely gorgeous. It's just perfect for this application. That is a lovely root system. Look at the difference between those two grows. In this video, I'm going to compare and contrast the two methods in a set and forget side-by-side comparison, utilizing a brand new 3D print so that you can utilize cheap buckets for growing leafy greens. So in our never-ending quest to answer some of the biggest questions in life, today we ask the question, deep water culture or Kratky? Which is more productive? And given all that's involved with the setup and running of systems, is it really worth the extra power and effort to set up a deep water culture system versus a Kratky hydroponic system? In addition to this, I'm also going to be releasing a 3D print so that you can utilize lidless buckets, which tend to be the cheapest form of bucket, for Kratky and deep water culture. Now, obviously, I don't want to exclude the people without 3D printers. So if you don't have a 3D printer, you will just have to purchase a bucket with a lid or make your own, like we have done a few times before. And you're not really restricted to buckets. We've grown plants in coolers, eskies, chili bins, and countless other containers. However, for those who are following along at home with a 3D printer, here it is. This 3D print was made possible by the Bamboo Labs larger print bed dimensions, purely because it is a 256 by 256 square, which we can print a larger 3D print. Okay, so let me introduce you to the 3D print. This is the main central portion of the 3D print. It takes up pretty much the entire surface of our 3D printer's print bed. And this new size that I've been able to achieve has meant that we are just able to overlap the outside of most cheap buckets. This is maxed out at 300 millimeters, I'm pretty sure. I'll put an actual number down below me. But it allows us to place our 3D print over a quite large bucket area. And this is going to make it extremely versatile because we can lay it over the top of various sizes of buckets. And if the print is too large, you can just scale it down, including all of the other pieces and the specifically designed net cups that fit within them. Say your bucket was 250 mils. You would take the percentage that is of 300 mils and scale it down that percentage. For a 250 millimeter bucket, it is 1/6 of the size of the print. So you would scale it down 20%. So let me show you how it fits together. So this is the main section. It comes in lots of different formats. So you can see here I've got a 4-space variant, and here I have a 2-space, and over here just a single. Edges clip onto the outside of the print, and they allow you to customize the way that you interact with this custom Kratky lid. This here is just a single planter Kratky lid. You would have your plant in your net cup, slide your net cup into the hole in the lid, and that will just allow you to refill the water in the bucket and allow you to do all of your pH management and EC checks as well. This has also given me a way to customize the flaps on the lid. So not only do you have this option, but if we take a section out of our flaps, we can make room for air tubes and pump cords. And there are multiple styles. So this allowed us to customize our planters. And we just attach these in the configuration that you would like. So there we have our Kratky and deep water culture lids set up and ready to put onto the top of our buckets. And as you can see, the deep water culture one has a nice groove where we can put all of our tubing into. And at the front, we have an easily accessible window so that we can top up and check on our reservoirs. I'm gonna make up more than these 2 buckets, but I actually haven't printed the appropriate lid sizes for our extra buckets. These ones are 99 cents from my local hardware store. They're a virgin plastic. They are the cheapest bucket you can find. They're very thin plastic. These are actually $15 buckets. And then you have to buy the lids as well. It ends up being about 20 bucks for a lid and bucket, whereas this is 99 cents. And if you get your filament cheap, I'll put the price that this costs just down below to print, because I know that 3D printing seems expensive, but the products you can create with it end up saving you so much money in the end that the hobby kind of pays for itself, a lot like distilling or brewing. And it's a productive use of time. So haters, keep on hating. So let's make up our buckets, and I'm just gonna make up the other buckets that you'll see later in the video the same way. First of all, we're just gonna fill up our buckets with water. I will point out at this point, I have actually designed different sizes of net cups. Now, you can use whichever you like. One is just gonna go down further into the bucket, and it just means that the roots will have more media to explore. Now, I've made these net cups in many different sizes so that you can pick and choose what net cup you use, and it allows the plants to actually have access to the water and nutrient all the way down into the base of the bucket. Now, I actually think that that's an interesting experiment in itself. We don't want to do too many experiments at once. I'm going to focus on a shorter net cup, and we can put our nutrient solution into these buckets. So to make this as fair as possible, I'm going to make up the nutrient in one of the buckets, split it in half, and then top it up with water. And conveniently, leafy greens are about half strength, so I don't need to add any more nutrient to it after that. So I'll make up this bucket full strength. First, I'm just gonna add in some pH up. This is available on the Hydroland website. So I'm just gonna add that in because I know how much I need to pre-adjust my water. Now that comes in a potassium carbonate powder, which you can purchase, and it's like 10 bucks for a quantity that you probably won't go through in years. Next, we're going to be using our Diamond White and NitroCal premixed solutions that we mixed up in our quick and easy hydroponic solution dosing video. We're just gonna add in 1 shot of each because this is 10 liters and that's the perfect amount. So 1 shot and 1 shot. We can mix that up just using a nutrient mixer or a spoon, available on the Hydroland website. And we can test our levels. pH is 6.1, which is good. We're at 3 on our EC. Now that's actually good because that's gonna split in half to 1.5, which is the high end of leafy greens. You kind of wanna be like just below 1 to 1.5. So I'm going to split this in half, perfect, and add in some water. And our pH is about 6.3 for both. And our millisiemens, or our EC, is 1.65 and 1.64, which is within the margin of error that I'm happy with. So all we're gonna do now is fill up our net pots with grow media. So I'm just using scoria and cocoa mix, but you can just use plain cocoa if you like. Then we're just gonna leave a little bit at the top, like so, and that is going to give us a place to plant into. And then we're just going to slot them into our Kratky and deep water culture system. So here I have Jericho baby leaf cos lettuce, and it is actually the cos that is behind me, which is doing incredibly well. So I'm really happy with how this plant is taking to that system. So I'm just gonna add in a sprinkle and we can thin them out a bit later. And then I'm just gonna add some cocoa over the top of those, like so. And we can put those in place under our lights. And this is where I'm going to be growing them, and I'll be growing them under the My Grow array. So something interesting happened when I scaled these down for the smaller buckets. So this is at 82% scale. You can print it all on one bed, which is nice. And it's just a smaller version. You probably can't really tell, but I can lay it over the top. As you can see, we're quite a bit smaller. And I'm just going to assemble this. I've gone too small. I've miscalculated. That actually fits perfectly in the top of that bucket though. Look at that. So I guess you could use them that way. I'm gonna have to do that again, I think. Okay, I should have done the maths. This is gonna be 94%, but 95 to be safe, of the size to fit this bucket. Probably a little bit less for this bucket, but it does have this spout. I'm gonna go with 95%. It's about 290, the bucket size that it can fit. And the bucket that I wanna fit is gonna be about 270. I filled up all these buckets in the same way that I filled up the first two. A couple of seeds in each. And the cocoa is already wicked up, so it's nice and wet. And we'll just push those down and cover them over a little. Now, for the deep water culture, I'm gonna be using this air pump. It is the AP750R, 750 liters per hour, I think that is. And I'm going to be putting my main line into the large bucket, and that's going to be running one 50mm air stone. And then I'm actually going to split the second line between two buckets. So these two buckets, and that's going to be running two 50mm air stones. So I'm just gonna make sure that this works. All we have to do here is we take our air stone and you just put it in through the side, and our bucket lid already has a cutout so that it seals around it. For the two rear ones, put our air line on a T and we can run two lines off it. And then we just pop our stones into our buckets. I'll turn it on. Yep, there we go. You can see the bubbles there. That's in our main one. Over here, you can see we've got bubbles in both of our split one. So that'll work absolutely fine. Okay, we're good, we're set up now. Turn this on. What do we got? 212. Let's get it up to 350. And then the higher they climb, the more light they get. All right, that's good, I like that. Now we can set up the time-lapse cameras and see how they grow. Now, unfortunately, my time-lapse cameras almost completely failed for the whole time-lapse. I got a few fleeting shots of the plant growth. I even set up the slider trying to get some nice parallax shots, but unfortunately, we're stuck with a few glimpses of their grow throughout and some pictures that I took. But there are some extremely interesting results as we go through the footage that I do have. Now, you're seeing here a few time lapses, and then the results are about a week or two into the grow, and you can see that the lettuce are doing really nicely. The movement on the leaves is actually from the fan, and that is a rather important part of this grow. You really want to make sure that you have a fan across any indoor grows that you're undertaking, because it helps the nutrients move through the plants, and it'll give you this really lush green that you're seeing with these plants. It's when they get to about this stage that I like to thin them out, because you can tell which plants are vigorously growing and which ones you probably want to move to another system that you're less enthusiastic about. So I thinned out all of these lettuce, and don't worry, I did save them. They went to a new home outdoors. I put them into my nutrient film technique. This is one of the reasons I really like having so many plant spacings, because you can just move plants around to where you've harvested some. I did pick that little fella up. He is going to survive. Now, here's some time-lapse footage from later in the grow, and you can see that the plants are, loving the system and the environment that I've created. On the right, we have the deep water culture, and on the left, we have the Kratky. And it's at this point that you kind of get a feeling for the direction that these systems are taking. The Kratky is actually performing better than the deep water culture. And you can see in this footage that I took, this is the start of where the nutrient solution really started to deplete more so in the deep water culture than in the Kratky. All right, so it's actually a few days before I want to finish up, but you can see that the deep water culture ones are wilting, and I'm pretty sure it's because some of them haven't developed roots enough to travel down into the water that's left. There is a little bit of water left, and the bubbles are causing it to splash up, but they're just not as healthy as the Kratky. And I'll see if I can get into the Kratky. Like, look at those. And I'll see if I can get in the Kratky. And you can see that there's just a mat of roots. The deep water culture has actually done not quite as well. We'll see. We'll see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to top up these ones just to get some life back into them. We'll see how they go once I top them up. And I'm just topping them up with water. And what an interesting result we have here. Color me surprised too, because I did not think that the Kratky method would come out on top. And that is what we're seeing here. There is a caveat to this result. This result is from the set and forget method that was used here. There may have been a different result if I had topped up the deep water culture method over the course of the grow. That being said, I wish the time-lapse cameras were running, because throughout the grow, the Kratky lettuce actually looked a lot healthier towards the end, even before we started running out of water. And I think this was because the deep water culture bubbling and the injection of air into the system actually caused a bit of evaporation, which concentrated the nutrient. There was a power outage, and the bubbler did actually act as a siphon and siphon out a tiny bit of nutrient, which can be stopped with an inline fitting. But this is all preaching to the fact that it is a lot more complicated to set up leafy greens in a system like this. And as far as I'm concerned, having to do nothing and getting a full harvest out of the Kratky system answers the question completely for me. Not could you grow lettuce in a deep water culture system, it's should you grow lettuce in a deep water culture system. If you can get a whole grow passively without spending the extra money on air stones, pumps, stoppers to stop the air pumps from siphoning it out if you have a blackout, why wouldn't you just grow them in Kratky? Okay, so I want to talk to you about the environmental things I ticked off my list, especially to do with indoor growing. There is one problem that I'd like to point out with this grow. Some of the tips on all the lettuce, not just the deep water culture, but also the Kratky, some of the tips of the lettuce are burnt. Now, the reason for this burning, and it's on some of the healthiest lettuce here, is that the plants are trying to get rid of excess salts. They expel salt onto their leaves, and it gets pushed out at the tips of the leaves. What this does is it concentrates salt at the tip of the leaf. And just for context, our hydroponic solution, the hydroponic powder that we're adding in, is essentially just mineral salts. You can kind of see where I'm going here. The plants have had too much hydroponic nutrient, essentially. They are trying to get rid of the excess salts in the plants. They're being pushed to the edge of the leaves, and what happens is osmosis. The salts draw water back out of the leaves once they've been expelled, and they actually cause a necrosis on the tips of the leaves. The way that you would stop this from happening is you reduce the salt concentration, or the EC, in the nutrient solution. At the start, I said 1.5 is like the high end of what lettuce can tolerate. And you're seeing some of the effects of a nutrient solution that's too high in the tips of these plants. So to fix this, even though this grow has been absolutely incredible with the Kratky, I would definitely recommend starting the nutrient solution at a lower EC, and you will not get this tip burn that I have here. Another consideration that I had for this grow, and we talked about this in the last deep water culture versus Kratky video, is airflow. And I had a fan blowing over the top of these lettuce the entire grow. It was oscillating, so it moved backwards and forwards, and it created air movement over the top of the leaves of the lettuce, because indoor growing, there's no natural air movement. The air movement passes over the top of the leaf, and it allows transpiration of water through the plant, and that is what actually pulls a lot of nutrients up through the plant itself. Calcium specifically is brought up through the plant in this action. So having the correct airflow across your plants is a major consideration when growing indoors. I don't have this light on full. This is a very powerful light. I have this light on, what are we at? It's at about 50%. This is the MyGrow Array, and it is a fantastic grow light. I just did a video with Shane from MyGrow, and he also supplies in his store these. These are an affordable par meter. Up until now, I've been using the Apogee MQ500, and this is actually a quite expensive par meter. It's worth about I think it's about 1,500 bucks, but these are a fraction of the price. I think they're between $300 and $400. Now, that may be overkill for a lot of people, and that's absolutely fine, but this has actually been indispensable in my indoor growing. It's allowed me to build a picture in my head of what light the plants require, and it's allowed me to standardize across different light sources what I'm feeding my plants. Here I'm actually running these plants at about 350 par, and that is perfect for these lettuce and really all leafy greens. So I'll leave a link below where you can head over to the MyGrow website and pick up this spot on meter if you are interested. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to compare the roots between the deep water culture and the Kratky. So let's lift up our lid. Well, that's empty. That is completely empty. That's so lucky. This is probably one of the last days that I could have filmed this. We'll have a look. Wow, look at that. Look at those roots. They're so white. Those roots are incredibly healthy. You can see at the bottom there, that's just cocoa that has fallen down into the bucket. There's actually, I don't know if you can see this, there's no water at all left in the bucket. This is fully mature lettuce. We've used up a whole bucket. So I think that 4 was the right amount for, well, this is a 20-litre bucket, 4 lettuce and a 4-spot lid, and it produced, I mean, just some really nice lettuce. I'm just gonna pull one out to show you. Like, this is definitely my favorite lettuce. Like, look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. This is the Jericho Cos, and it is a miniature Cos variety. It's just perfect for this application because you could just come and harvest a whole head like this, and then that's basically a whole salad. I'm really happy with how these turned out. So that's one of the Kratky. Let's have a look at another one of the Kratky. So here we go again. Have a go at the roots on that Kratky. That is a lovely root system. And this is just all passive. 4 heads of lettuce again, and we actually have a lot more water left in this one. There's about 1 inch or 1.5 inches of water. You can see all the cocoa that's come out of the net cups. So I'll just pop that one back in. There's a heap more water left in this one. So the difference here is as I'm moving back away from the fan, there's more water left over. This is also just 2 plants. I'll just show you that quickly. There it is. This is a 2 spacing. I actually think that the 4 spacing did a little bit better with production. All right, so here we have deep water culture. The amount of water that we have left in these isn't indicative of how much there was because I did top them up, remember. So I'm just gonna show you what's in them. Yep, I don't know what's gone on there. There's no, like the roots, they're just not as healthy. There's a bunch of roots on this one. But they seem to have all come out at the top where there would have been a bunch of bubbles at the start. I mean, you can see where they've tried to grow down to the water. It's just not worked as well as the Kratky, honestly. Take that out. Another one of the deep water culture. Yeah, the roots, they're just not anywhere near as healthy as those Kratky roots. Beside the fact that they ran out of nutrient like probably 3 or 4 days ago now, they weren't producing as much. I was actually quite surprised. And the last one, yeah, this one has same problem again. The roots, there's just not as many of them. And I think it's down to this fact. So if we actually have a look, see here how we've got heaps of roots coming out the very top and actually inside, I'm not sure if you can see this, but inside the net cups, that scoria has done really well. A lot of the cocoa has gone missing. So I would recommend mixing scoria because it has given these plants a heap of surface area to give their root structure. You can see here how all of the roots have started up the top. I guess they're focused on root growth up the top, and as the water's depleted, this hasn't benefited the plants. Now I will say that if you were to top this up, this may have been a completely different result. However, I don't think that many people want to. I think that people just want to grow a lettuce and restart the grow. If you're not cutting and coming again, there's no point in a perpetual lettuce grow. Have a look on the ground here. So on the left we have Kratky and on the right we have deep water culture. Look at the difference between those 2 grows. Just the sheer quantity of leaf that the Kratky has produced. Now, this result is probably going to be a bit controversial for lovers of deep water culture, but this result really only applies to single grow leafy greens, and going forward my recommendation will be to grow lettuce in Kratky because it makes sense for those people that don't want to mess around with power and pumps and topping up nutrient solution. When it comes to a practicality of system, I can't see why you would grow lettuce in deep water culture over Kratky. Now, for longer term flowering and fruiting plants, absolutely. If you have a refilling deep water culture system, it may well be more productive than a Kratky hydroponic system. However, I've done Kratky tomatoes before and they worked really well as well. Probably not the best way to grow tomatoes, so I wouldn't recommend that, but this method works for all different kinds of plants. I used to be a Kratky skeptic, and the method has surprised me over and over again, and it makes me really happy to have been wrong originally about Kratky because it really does make gardening accessible to everyone. No matter whether you've got the budget for a whole property's worth of hydroponic systems or a couple of buckets with some seeds and some nutrient. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoochos. I really enjoyed creating it and it was a fantastic result, albeit probably a little controversial. Happy hydroponicking, and I'll see you next time on Hoochos.